You've seen the principles behind a solid logging setup in Datadog, but do you know how to get started in practice? If not, give me less than 10 minutes and I'll walk you through your first setup, ready to scale from day one. Let's dive in. First up, log retention. By default, Datadog keeps your logs for 15 days, but you can extend that depending on your needs. Go to your organization settings and enable additional retention periods. This flexibility is key, especially when it's time to configure your indexes. And setting that up? Super simple. Just head to organization settings. You can get there from several entry points in the platform. In my case, I'm navigating via Teams, then General Preferences. Scroll down to the Out of Contract Retention section. You can enable extended retention here if needed. Now let's build your core set of indexes. I recommend starting with a clean set of 3 indexes. Start with your primary index, logs from NV-prod or environment production. In my setup, logs come in with both variations, so I'll filter for both. However, it is not a best practice. Try to remove any variation of the same NV tag. I also recommend adding status error. These are your most valuable logs. Since I want to analyze them long term, I set retention to 30 days. If you're working within a budget, 15 days is also a good option. These are critical logs, so keeping them longer is worth it. Next, create a secondary index for NV-prod logs that aren't status error. Since this index is second in the chain, anything not matching the first filter will land here. That means all non-error logs in production. I'll keep these for 15 days, still useful but less critical. One thing I always do, exclude all status debug logs here. They have low value and I don't want them indexed. Now let's go a step further and create an index for dev and staging logs. Let's call it NV dev logs kept for 3 days. I like adding a suffix to the name for easier tracking. This makes it easier later when building dashboards, especially if you want to track log cost by index name. The query is simple, envdev or envstaging. I'll retain those logs for 3 days. Here, I'll set the quota to 1 GB. As a rule of thumb, set your quota to about 3x your expected daily volume. Right now, I don't have exact estimates, so I'm starting low and adjusting as needed. If I ever hit the quota, I'll increase it incrementally. Once that's set, just click Save. This index comes third in priority because order matters when assigning logs. Now I'll add an exclusion filter, removing 100% of all status debug logs from this index. Perfect, now we're in good shape. Last filter I add, I exclude logs that don't have a team tag. This ensures every log is tied to a specific team. If a log isn't tagged, it doesn't get indexed. People must follow tagging rules before logs show up in the platform. This is a great way to enforce accountability and optimize cost at the team level. Finally, any logs that don't match earlier filters will fall into the default index, your catch-all bucket. Even there, we apply the same filtering rules. I exclude logs without a team tag, and I exclude debug logs. Some logs will still fall here, but they're tightly scoped. You'll want to review those later and possibly route them to a more relevant index. Let's keep it simple for now. Skip custom log-based metrics at this stage. They're useful later, but not necessary for your initial setup. You can always come back to them when you're ready for custom log KPIs. If you're just getting started, a single archive is all you need. Route all logs into that archive, optionally excluding status debug if it's just noise. This gives you a fallback in case you ever need to rehydrate logs later. So let's build your archive. Head to Logs, then Archives, then Forwarding in the Datadog UI. This brings you to the archive setup page. Click Create New Archive. If your cloud provider is already connected, you'll be prompted to name your archive and define a filter. Since we're just starting out, we'll leave the filter blank. This sends all logs to the archive. Below that, you'll find additional AWS config options, like storage class. The important settings are further down. Here, I'm tagging archived logs. This makes it easier to search them when rehydrating later. You can also add rehydration-specific tags, but I'll skip that for now. Let's move on to setting the maximum scan size for rehydration. In my case, I'll set the scan cap to 1000 GB. Since scans cost about 10 cents per GB, that's roughly $100 max. Click Save once everything's configured. Worried about usage spikes? Time to set index quotas. Here's the strategy. Look at 1 week of log volume per index. Select the biggest day. Multiply that by 3.5x. That becomes your quota. This way, you're protected against unexpected spikes without blocking day-to-day operations. And yes, enable notifications for when these quotas are breached. Here's how to review and add a quota. Open any index and click Edit. Scroll to the bottom, you'll see the daily quota setting. Ideally, apply quotas to all indexes. This gives you a safeguard against unexpected surges in log volume. This is the foundation of cost-effective logging. Use quotas as a safety net in case something anomalous happens. To stay ahead of surprises, create a monitor for estimated index usage. Compare this week versus last week. Trigger alerts if there's a 10–20% increase. Link it to your log usage dashboard, covered in a previous video. This gives you a safety net and early warning system. Let's check out Datadog's built-in metrics. Open the metric summary and search for estimated_usage.logs. Perfect. From here, I want to create my first monitor on log volume changes. I'll copy the metric and head over to Monitors. Click New Monitor. Then choose Metric Monitor. Actually, a change alert is even better for this use case. Select the estimated_usage.logs metric. Set the aggregation to sum across time. I want to track the percent change between the current hour and the same hour last week, since usage patterns are often cyclical. This will alert me if there's a spike of more than 10%. And if you already know your weekly spend, a 10% increase could mean a significant cost jump. So this alert has real budget impact. From there, finish setting up the monitor to alert you anytime indexed log volume spikes unexpectedly. Lastly, let's talk continuous improvement. I recommend checking out the Data IKEA scorecards. They give you KPIs to track your log setup, best practices and maturity levels, a second pair of eyes when you're too busy to care about observability. This is the easiest way to make sure your setup doesn't rot over time. Because let's face it, you'll get busy, other teams will mess with things, and this keeps it all in check. Right now, I'm heading over to datawhycare.com to check the scorecards and see how my setup measures against best practices. I can see I'm missing some host or container data, so I score lower there. But when it comes to ownership, alert fatigue, and usage, I'm hitting 100%. All my indexes have quotas, exclusion filters, and multiple retention policies in place. You can dive deeper into each area to pinpoint where action is needed or where something's misconfigured. It's worth checking regularly. It keeps your setup sharp. And that's it. You now have a solid, cost-effective logging setup in Datadog to get started and getting ready for the first batch of logs. Your logs are indexed, archived, you have quotas and monitors in place, and a scorecard for the long-term visibility. Drop a comment if this helped you get started faster, or if you've got questions or use cases you want me to cover next. I'll also share a Terraform script in an upcoming blog post so you can deploy this setup instantly. Until next time, happy monitoring and keep your logs lean.